Hi there, I'm Bevan Thompson and welcome to the Wellbeing Whizz Omnicast. What is an Omnicast? Well, an Omnicast is a video podcast. It's also an audio podcast. It's also a blog on my website. It's many, many things. It's more than just a podcast, basically. And I'm the Wellbeing Whizz. I'm an anxiety coach who helps people manage their anxiety and start to live a better life. Now, what qualifies me for this, you're asking? Well, I used to suffer very badly from anxiety myself around maybe 10 years ago. I had all the symptoms you could think of, the sort of sweaty palms, the dizzy head, the random thoughts, racing thoughts. It turned to depression. It was essentially a living nightmare. And I spent a long time with doctors going through things like hypnotherapy. I tried tablets. I tried a lot of the different solutions. And I found the only thing that helped me was starting to go back to the start, work out how my thoughts worked, work out how they were creating my emotions, how I was creating this anxiety. And what I did, I created a framework and kind of cured myself. That led on to me thinking, hang on a minute, other people should benefit from this, and the Wellbeing Whizz was born. I set up as a coach, helping people manage their anxiety and helping them live a better life, as I say. The Omnicast every week is about sharing tips about this, interviewing other people about their anxiety, me talking about ways to understand anxiety and how to cure it, and essentially just a place where you can learn more about anxiety itself and sort of sharing a lot of people's experience with it. Welcome to the Wellbeing Whizz Omnicast episode 27. Now, recently we've been sort of chatting to coaches and people like that, and this change of series, we're going to look at more talking about anxiety with people who suffer from anxiety or have suffered from anxiety. So I've invited a load of guests on after this new series has started to talk about their experiences with anxiety, which leads me on to today's guest. Now, I'm going to be perfectly honest, this is a friend of mine, so it could be a long chat. The gentleman's name is Mr. David DuBois. Hi, David, how are you?
How are you doing? Nice to see you.
Okay, it's good to have you, mate. I've known David for an awful long time. I don't know how many years now. You might know.
I met you for the very first time when your son was in his car seat about 3 weeks old.
Oh, my word. So, well, nearly 13 years, 13 and a half years then. Crikey. You put up with me that long. You know, you've done well, mate. Should be getting some sort of award soon from the Queen, one would imagine. But yeah, so tell us a bit about yourself, David. Tell the listeners a little about yourself, what you do, and then we'll get into the proper chat about the old anxiety there.
I'm a husband. I'm a parent of 3 kids, 3 great kids. I'm occasionally a drummer, according to my bandmates. That's alleged, of course, and you're one of them. So I work as a film producer, making corporate films for high-end blue chip clients. I've got a history in post-production, special effects, editing, color grading, all that sort of stuff, animation. And then I've got to the point where I have decided that actually I went through quite a lot of therapy. Still, I'm going through therapy for anxiety and various other things, and I decided that I wanted to look at what I was doing with my life, and I've decided to train as a hypnopsychotherapist in order to help people out with their anxiety, amongst other things.
So a perfect guest for this. I want to go back to the special effects. I'm thinking, after this video's done, you could probably put like some hair on me.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of stuff like that, to be honest.
You're good, but you're not that good.
Real tall ask. It's a really, really tall ask, that, Bev, to be honest. It's, you know, the sheen on your head alone is difficult to get.
It would be brilliant. Flowing hair throughout the podcast appears and starts growing. Anyway, so we talk about anxiety, you know what we talk about on this podcast. And so what does the word anxiety mean to you? What does it sort of say to you?
Oh, what does it say? It's originally, when I read this question, I thought it's actually pretty easy to explain. And then it's not. It's so not, because it's so personal. So I can explain to you what anxiety for me is, but it's such an individual trait. No 2 people have the same experience. And that's really, really important, because when it comes to life coaching or something like psychotherapy or hypnotherapy, you've got to find out what that person's experience is of anxiety. So for me, anxiety is the feeling, well, one of the ways I explain it is it feels like I have to be doing something whilst wishing I could stop doing the things I'm doing and relax. So
totally understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it can be a tight ball in my stomach. It can be coming in from work and which doesn't happen very often at the minute, but it can be coming in from work and seeing, you know, my wife sat down with a cup of tea, for example, and then I come in and I see all the jobs that need doing. And it's not that she's not seeing the jobs, it's just that she's chosen to have that time out to herself. And I don't always do that. I'm getting better at that. We'll come to that later on.
See, I'm the other way. I'm if I am sitting down, this is quite interesting because my anxiety works the other way. If I'm the one sitting down and having a cup of tea, and my wife Lisa, we've both got a wife called Lisa, starts doing something in the house, I feel like I have to jump up and start doing something.
Yeah, that happens as well.
It's like,
yeah,
that's how mine works. Like the opposite. And then you can say it's different for everybody. There you go. That's already one good example.
Yeah. So I've got neighbours popping around to say hello now, which is quite exciting. In the middle,
neighbours on the podcast.
I should incidentally tell you, you know, this is not my usual abode. This is the caravan on the drive. This is Penelope.
This is the famous Penelope, of course.
This is the famous, yeah. The Penelope and Me website came down recently because I didn't want to spend any money keeping it live, and I'm not living in here. But I lived in here for 2 weeks at the start of lockdown, which is something we can explore a bit later on. But because that had a huge impact on anxiety and how that all works and stuff like that. So,
right. So I want to jump ahead in the story then. I had to try to jump ahead there and tell everyone about Penelope.
Let's go back. So let's go back to anxiety, what it is for me. So tight ball in the stomach, I think, is a great example. A lot of people get a feeling in their stomach for anxiety. And noticing those physical bodily feelings is really important. Something I'm just starting to tune into, listening to your body, listening to how your body's reacting, going with that gut feeling. I also get a feeling of wanting to do better and wanting to make others better whilst not concentrating on myself. That a bit of a people pleaser aspect going on there. And they kind of, all these things kind of self-drive. Which is interesting. And then things like listening to your podcast, your thoughts are not you, I think is a really, really cool little mantra that you've got out there. And it's remembering that. And I still forget that sometimes.
Of course you do. It's one of those niggling kind of, almost like the evil voice thoughts, like, well, you're not good enough, you're not doing well. It's like, well, it's got to be me because I'm even commenting on something I know and something I'm doing and something in my life. So it's got to be me. There's no two ways about it. And yeah, it's stepping back from it now and again and going third party. Let's third party this. Thoughts are not me and all that kind of thing.
But it's hearing those thoughts as well and realizing that they're not you. They're intrusive thoughts, and everyone gets them. Mm-hmm. And it's something that flashes through your memory, through your mind rather. Listening to a podcast the other day that I listened to quite a lot as part of my course, and they were talking about intrusive thoughts. And the guy who one of the two guys who runs the podcast was saying, I remember he's a teacher, and he was saying, I remember standing in class and saying to this class of I don't know, whatever they were, 30 somethings. I was driving down the road the other day and I suddenly thought, I wonder what it would be like to turn onto this motorway and drive the wrong direction down the motorway. And he said, it's not suicidal. It's not stress. It's just a thought flashing through your mind. It's not you. It's just one of those things. It's a little bit like, you know, I have a thing when I get to the edge of a cliff and I go, what would it be like to jump off? I don't want to kill myself.
I'm at a train station. What would it be like if I just stepped out of the train came? Yeah.
Yeah. Or you know, and people get these flashes all the time. And it's really important to understand they're intrusive and they're perfectly natural. If you get a lot of them, then you probably should go and start seeing someone, because I think TA therapists call them ANTs, automatic negative thoughts. Mm-hmm. And so if you get a lot of those, then you really need to try and go and see someone about them. But the thing is, you get positive thoughts that flash through your head as well. You don't
focus on those quite as much, no, because they don't seem to have that same impact. Whereas in negative intrusive thoughts tend to be more, I don't know, more impactful on your life. If you think of something good, you seem to discount it quite quickly. And it's strange how your brain works there, isn't it?
It is bizarre, yeah. And they just fire randomly. Your brain's doing it all the time. I can't remember. There's something ridiculous of how many thoughts you have a day. It's
60,000, I believe.
60,000. Now you probably have 150,000 now.
Well, I said that when I was suffering from anxiety the most. I thought 60,000 was a small number. 150,000 I would be confident to stake my reputation on it, actually. But I mean, so tell us about a time when you've suffered particularly from anxiety then. So these are the kind of things that it means to you. Tell us about a time when you've really kind of, you know, been under the cosh with it. Because I think learn about how it feels to be under the cosh with it and how you got out of it is really handy to listeners and viewers, really, I think.
Yeah, completely. Well, well, right now.
Right now. All right, right now.
So, yeah, right now.
Me.
Talking to you. Yeah, well, I'm talking to you and I'm talking to a load of other people. It's daft because I am talking to you. You know, I'm talking to one of my best mates about a subject I'm deeply interested in. I want to flip my career over to. But the reason I'm anxious now is I'm really aware that you've had some amazing guests on your show. What are we on at? 27?
27, yeah.
So you've had some incredible business women and you've had, I think you've had 2 guys on, I think on 35 memory serves. There was Ryan from My Only Solution, wasn't it? And then there was
that's right. And Conic the other week, the ADHD coach,
yeah. So there's anxiety there because it's like you've got all these incredible people on, and I'm kind of sat here going, well, what can I offer? And it's been a really interesting process, kind of sitting down and going, what can I offer here? What am I doing here? Why should your listeners listen to what I have to say? And I realized that if I came on and was completely honest about anxiety and how I feel about stuff, then that's probably going to be helpful to people, because being honest about mental health issues opens up the conversation. So I my kids know that I suffer from anxiety and stress and have mental health issues. They know I go and see a therapist, etc. We don't delve deep into that, what all that's about, but they now know that actually if I'm wound up, they used to kind of leave me alone and go into another room, for example. Not nasty to them, but you become short. Your patience becomes short with everybody. And now they know that actually if they can come and give me a hug and tell me it's all right, and that sometimes breaks the spiral of anxiety. Because anxiety is a little bit, it's for me, I see it as a spiral. It's like a downward spiral, and that spiral's addictive.
Absolutely.
I'm straying off topic here.
No,
I'll come back to that later.
It's that imposter syndrome kind of feeling that what Noor Hibbert, one of my favorite writers of a book I really love, calls comparison hangover. You get like a comparison. So you're comparing yourself to people who have been on the podcast. But actually, the reason I've asked you on, because I'm trying to shift the focus this time to let's call it real people and real comments on anxiety, rather than people who are trying to teach you how to get out of it. It's more kind of like you're sharing your experience. So actually, in my opinion, you're the perfect person to have on, but then your brain's telling you otherwise. You know what I mean? It's really, that's an interesting kind of comparison hangover thing.
It's a bit ironic, isn't it? But talking about it helps. That's what talking therapy. That's what I'm becoming. I'm becoming a person-centered therapist. So talking about it is really good. But unlike I know you talked about your panic attacks in the past and your toilet roll fort in Asda, which still does make me smile. I have to say, it was a horrible moment for you, but then being able to look back on it with a bit of humor actually is great. But I've not suffered from a panic attack. I tend to suffer from compound stress and anxiety. So it's like the dripping tap. It kind of goes and goes and goes and goes until I either explode, or more often with me, my body breaks from the pressure and I become ill. That's my normal route. So I am learning that valve release basically. And normally that stress and that anxiety and that compounding is caused by the stress of managing expectation of others at work, for example, and then managing my own expectations of myself at work.
And to be honest, sometimes that's the bigger of the two, actually. It's like expectations of work are big, but then again, you look at it, imposter syndrome, comparison, all those things that you're expecting to deliver in your life, and you want to deliver a life for your kids, you want to deliver a life for your wife and your family. And it's like all those extra pressures you're almost creating yourself are the bigger ones of the two. I found that, I had pressure with work, I had my own business, all that sort of stuff, but it was my own goals I was setting myself, my own targets, my own, even what kind of person I wanted to be, and be actually not even that, what kind of person I wanted to be perceived as by everyone in the world.
Yeah, social pressures, introjected values. Introjected values are massive, and it's like reading up about these as part of my course has just been almost as eye-opening as the stuff we talked about earlier on. With those thoughts, when you look at how you were brought up, and these introjected values basically make up your kind of, if you imagine your 10 commandments, that stone that lives within you, and these are the things. And it's like, actually, you look at those, and if you start to unpick yourself, you're bound to find at least one or two of those that you think, well, that isn't me. Where's that come from?
No, it's come from, from like your parents or from your schooling or from wherever, and it's been at a very early age, and it's actually limiting you. It's holding you back. It's actually causing you more problem than good. And yeah, like you say, if you go back to that core and you start unpicking it, you do find a lot of things that are creating this anxiety that you've just accepted as the way life should be, or the way you should be, or to be a good person you have to be this way or that way. Yeah, you're right. I can't disagree there.
But what's interesting is that a lot of these, they can be put on. It's not just parental. It's society as well that puts them on. A great one that I had, actually, a really, really good example, was when I was little. I was in hospital probably till I was about 5, on and off. I had really, really bad asthma. I was having asthma attacks all the time, and an introjected value that my parents put on to me inadvertently was basically, don't let the fact that you're ill stop you from doing what you want to do. So I used to be running up and down the wards, towing oxygen tanks with me. I'd be on my nebulizer, legging it up and down the wards. I had a sign above my bed that said, do not stop this child from eating, because I would burn energy off when I was in there. They just let me do whatever I wanted. Like, it was ace. Other kids were lying in bed. I'd walk up and go, can I have a cup of tea and some toast, please? You'd be 5 and they'd be like, there's your cup of tea and some toast. It was amazing. But that introjected value, when I got to the point where I was a bit older, my chest condition became a bit worse. That don't let it stop you, don't let your health stop you, actually became a problem.
Yes.
So it moved from something that I used as a kid, and right away through my teens and my 20s, I never let my health stop me. I always went out full bore and did things really hard. And then it got to the point where I was actually, I've got to start listening to my body now, because my body was breaking in loads and loads of chest infections and things like that, for example. And so when I taught this through in therapy, and we eventually managed to unwrap the onion and got down to that introjected value. And went, well, that was really useful, but it now is not.
Yeah.
So by taking that value out, but it took a long time to get there.
Yeah, because they're so in sort of buried so deep in your value system and in your beliefs, and sometimes you don't even know they're there. You'd like to say they're just like they're written in stone, but you don't know they're there. Yeah, they're just kind of underlying everything, and you don't even aware of them. So yeah,
no, completely. And it's really it's a really interesting process to be able to go and dig into your own. Like, I think the 10 Commandments is the things that people most relate to, because it's Bible story, and that's the best comparison of
because they're set in stone, and they're kind of like you say, the rules to live by. And this is we're getting off topic, but I love it. I could talk about your brain and how your mind works all day. It's a little bit like how I tell people that you have a set of rules for how you want me to behave, but you never tell me.
Yeah.
So you have like a set of friendship rules, if you like, and you get massively offended when I do something, but I don't know that's upsetting you at all, because I'm just doing my own little thing. But you've never set out our friendship in a sort of like contract and said, right, thou shalt not do these following things. So you get offended and go, well, can't believe he's done that. I can't believe he's broken my rule. But I don't know anything about those rules that you've got for a friend's job, if you know what I mean.
Completely.
I love that as well.
I think it's great, but whose problem is that? It's like,
exactly. It's not mine. This is the point. People get angry with that friend and go, well, I can't believe they did that. But actually, it's just you holding these beliefs that a friend should do X, Y, and Z, and they've not done that. But you've never told them you expect. It's like a partner, anybody, that you expect certain things from them, and you've got this set of boundaries or kind of rules or a rule book they've got to follow, and they're not following it, and how very dare they? And it's like, you don't even know they're doing it. It's brilliant. That's one of the things I like. It's a similar kind of thing.
Absolutely. What's really interesting is when they came on, when I started this hypnopsychotherapy course, they said to us, you're going to change, and your friendship groups are going to change, and some of you will split up with your partners.
Wow.
Because as you're learning about how to treat others and how to work with others, you're learning about yourself, because you've got to learn about yourself first and how that works, and you're going to change. And the people who are on the journey with you at the moment are not going to change. Sorry, as in friends and people who are not on the journey with you. So I'm learning. I'm learning and doing my training. My wife and my kids and you, and my friendship group are not on that same journey. So you might not change.
You're right.
Now, as a result, there have been people that I interact with that I've noticed them doing things, and I'm like, I don't like that actually. And there's been the odd person.
Just to let me know if it's me.
Yeah. There's been one person when he left the band. No, there's been one person that actually I've got to the point where I'm actually going to say something to them because I want to keep them as a friend. But the way that they are dealing with certain situations, I now find quite offensive.
Right. That's
because of how I've changed. And I've been really lucky. You know, my wife is what you know, Lisa. She's so level-headed, and she's so kind of like Mother Nature. I think one of my old friends described her as. She's just chilled, and so she's able to move with me.
Yeah, she's more
flex with me.
Flexible. Yeah.
You have to rewrite a contract between you. So when I qualify as a therapist, which I qualify as a therapist, a hypnotherapist in October-ish, something like that. And then there's another few years after that for the psychotherapy side, but I'm doing all the psychotherapy training as I go along. So I'm learning all about this. And I kind of said to her, what's going to be weird is that I come in from work and I would vent about work. And that's one of the ways I get rid of my anxiety about work, is I'll actually vent to my wife about it. When I do this work, I can't.
Yeah, you won't be allowed to, yeah.
Yeah, I can't ethically talk about clients and their situations. So we've had to recontract our relationship. And it's like, if I'm out and about in the street, it sounds bizarre, but you've got to do it. Because if I didn't do this now, we'd be in exactly the same situation that you were talking about, where the hypothetical, I'm offended at you for something you've done, but you don't know you're offended.
Absolutely.
It's like, out and about and someone comes up to me and says, hi, David, how you doing? And I say, how are you? And they're a client of mine. And she says, who's that? And I say, I'm afraid I can't tell you. And
it sounds a little bit scary, doesn't it? It's a bit spooky.
It sounds scary, yeah. But let's take a really obvious situation where it's a pretty young lady that comes up to me and says hello to me, and my wife who's with me, who does trust me, don't get me wrong.
Who's that? I can't.
Would say who's that, and I'd say I can't tell you. Yeah. Then that could open up a rift in a relationship.
Absolutely, yeah.
And no one wants that. So yeah, I've recontracted that with my wife. I've recontracted with my kids.
I quite like the idea of recontracting the wife. I could say hello to pretty ladies and say, you don't know who they are. Couldn't move, David. Couldn't move. So, what would you say was the hardest part of anxiety for you in general?
Well, yeah. What's the hardest part? Go on. I finish your question because you had more there.
And what's the sort of secret to managing, avoid it taking over? So for me, it was physical symptoms were equally as bad as intrusive thoughts, for example. So my worst part was like the dizziness and the feeling just generally awful. But yours might be something completely different.
No, sure. First off, personally, I don't think there's a secret to managing anxiety. There's no quick fixes in my mind for this. No. You can put a sticking plaster on a wound, but it's still a wound. So you've got to kind of deal with that. You can't fix it by reading a book. It's going to take work to fix it. And this is just my opinion on this. But if you've got, I think having support on that journey, whether it's friendship support, relationship support, therapist support, life coach support, it's going to become a lot easier to manage that. One of the great tricks I started doing was noticing. So, and noticing is really, really important for me. It's noticing your behavior. So what I started doing was I would find myself at a point where I'm really wound up. And I'd noticed that I was really wound up. And that was my point one. And then I go, right, okay, so next time I wound up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop doing what I'm doing completely, just stop. And I'm going to take a step back and mentally find out either what wound me up or what my thought was. And through doing that, you go backwards. Now, I talked earlier on about that downward spiral.
Yeah. You're going sort of back up the spiral, kind of.
Well, this is just it. What I started to do was once I figured out what my triggers were, because reflecting on your triggers is really important. That's part of noticing, because you'll get back so far and you'll go, I was asked to do that and I didn't want to do it. So anger is you not knowing how to do something a lot of the time. So if someone asked me to do something and I didn't know how to do it, or I didn't want to do it, and that was my trigger. And that then started making me anxious because I then wanted to do it because I'm a people pleaser. And then that it self-perpetuates, or you go down the spiral.
And this is what I work with all the time with clients, is that third-party space, that stepping back, and you're doing that sort of right there. You're going, okay, well, let's take a step back and see where this chain of events began.
No, it's not. It's not an easy thing to do, because when you're in the thick of it, and this is what you've got to remember, and I still do this, when you're in the thick of that anxiety and that stress, actually, as I said earlier on, it's addictive. So CBT has a great phrase for this, which my tutor taught me, which is basically that spiral is addictive because it's the easiest path.
The path of least
resistance. Go down. Yeah. And ironically, you get something from going down that path because it's familiarity, and thus it's a safe feeling you get from being anxious.
And that's what your body's reaction as a biological and very sort of throwback prehistorical reaction is, trying to keep you safe. So you're getting that kind of almost treat for doing, like a little dog, I guess, getting a little treat for doing what you're doing, because you're feeling safe, because you're in a well-trodden path that's not difficult to go down, because all the neural pathways are laid down for that to happen. So you're not working hard to do it. It's almost a subconscious thing you're doing. God, I tell you what, man, you could be on this all night. It's brilliant.
Well, it's great. Well, a great analogy for that is if you want to change your way of thinking, if you want to change what that path does, think of it like a cornfield, and you've walked that path through that cornfield so many times. That's my downward spiral. Yeah, is that path of the cornfield. You've got to let that path grow over. So you've got to start walking a new path, and eventually that new path grows up. The old path grows over, the new path becomes accessible. But in order to start walking down the new path, you need to realize when you're on the old path.
Yes.
And one of the things that triggers do, and noticing your behavior does, and for me this was absolutely vital, was it allowed me to put markers on the path. I put flags down. So I've got this, is it Dante's circles of hell, isn't it, where you're going down
Dante's Inferno. Yeah,
and it's like, so basically I would get to the point where I would notice behavior and go, that's a problem, and a flag goes up in the back of my head.
And I'm so, at level 3 now or whatever. Yeah, here I am.
Well, yeah, exactly. But what that enabled me to do then was make a decision. Do I want to carry on? Am I wound up enough to carry on down that path, down this safe path? Or do I want to stop the spiral? And if I want to stop the spiral, then I need to do whatever, breathing exercises, step away from the situation. There's loads and loads of techniques. You've talked about loads and loads on the podcast. But in order to make that old path go over, you've got to start walking the new path. But before you can walk that new path, you've got to set your flags up.
You've got to know you're on a path to begin with, haven't you? Otherwise you can't, like you say, you don't know you're doing it, you can't stop doing it.
This is just it.
And it's that distance and that stepping away thing. It's so important to noticing, like you were saying. I love that. Noticing is a good word to use.
Yeah, it's really good. And that's, I started doing that myself, and then I worked with my therapist to try and notice more and notice sooner. And it's a process that I win at some days and I don't win at.
But I think, again, that's another thing about managing anxiety. It's like, you're not going to be like seeing it as a monster, seeing it as a problem. Like I always say to people, you're never going to 100% beat it, because it's a normal human emotion. It's about learning that it is going to be there some days, but you know how to deal with it. A little bit like, I've got overexcited today and I calm myself down. That's an emotion created by a thought. It's the same pattern. It's just that you learn as a child to calm down. Stop bouncing around, Bev, calm down. In fact, you learn as a 47-year-old adult, stop bouncing around and behave yourself. But it's that you learn that skill to calm that emotion. And it's all about learning a skill to calm this particular emotion and stop it coming out of control.
And again, what's bizarre is the fact that because we are hardwired for fear and the negative, that's how brains are hardwired to stay alive. You don't notice all the time when you're bouncing around with the positive.
Yes.
It's like,
that gets put away because that's not scary enough to stay in the brain to keep you alive. It's just like, well, that was just a happy day. It's gone. It's just a shame, because actually it would be nicer to remember all the happy stuff rather than the awful stuff. We're so badly designed. We need human 2.0. So, I mean, I know we've said, like, this is an anxious moment. So my next question is a bit redundant. So I'm saying, how did you feel when you managed to begin to control it? But I suppose you've just explained you have begun to control it. So how did you feel when you finally sort of, the penny dropped, if you like, and you managed to, begin to control it? What sort of things did you do to do that with noticing and all that already? We've already gone
Yeah,
down
well,
a little bit.
noticing, it's noticing is really important, and like I say, some days I control it, some days I don't control it, and it's less of the latter these days, which is great. And it's think of it like an addiction. You fall off the wagon, you know, and it's great when you go a week and you think, oh, I've had a really good week this week, and celebrating those successes. Trying to be more positive, although that's I had a quite interesting experience with positivity recently, actually, because I wanted to become a more positive person. I'm a realist with pessimistic tendencies. I describe myself, and that's kind of
t-shirt that.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. It's as part of my job, you know, we can be spending a lot of money on film sets every minute, and I've got to make some really quick decisions where that money is best spent, whether it's best spent there fixing it, or whether it's best spent somewhere else, or whether we just scratch it or whatever. So I'm really good at running down negative processes to try and find a process that works. So I've kind of trained myself in my job to be more negative than I probably am.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's important how you react to that negativity. And I thought, oh, I'll try and teach myself to be more positive. And what I found was that by trying to be more positive made me more stressed. Because every time, well, no, this is, again, I was talking to someone about this the other night, and they were like, what do you mean? I was like, well, by forcing myself into a mindset all of the time, trying to be more positive, every time something negative came up, you would just beat yourself up.
Yeah, you've lost because you were trying to be positive.
Exactly. And so actually what I've got a friend who does NLP training, and she was telling me every night before she goes to bed, she says to herself 10 times, every day and every way, I'm getting better.
Getting better and better. That's one of my favorites. That's what I teach my clients to do all the time.
Yeah. And it's like, and
that's lesson one.
But I'm quite a proof guy. So, you know, it's, if you can prove it to me, then I will accept that most of the time. I might question it, but I'll accept it. So when she told me this, I was like, oh, that's just it's one of those things.
Did you do it with the fingers as well?
No, so she didn't show me.
Every time you say it, you press your finger into your palm, because then you're also doing something, feeling, hearing.
Okay.
Moving.
So in
NLP, it's like your whatever representational system you have, you're kind of reinforcing it by saying, hearing, and feeling.
Oh, that's interesting. I've not heard that one.
Yeah, that's
what I found was, given that I'm a proof person as well, what I found was that I wanted to give this a go, so I gave it a go, and it actually did make a difference. So I kind of that in itself has changed my thinking about a number of other aspects that I might consider to be a little bit out there.
Nothing's too out there. Not on my podcast. There's not. We've had all sorts on here. We've been talking to Viking spirit guides in the past on this podcast, so we'll try anything once.
Yeah. Why not runes? We'll do runes at some point as well.
Absolutely. Oh, it's fun. I love reading runes. It's great fun. So, okay, we'll move away from anxiety for a minute for the fun bits, because I like to lighten up, because it's been quite dark, right. But not dark but deep. Are there two people that you'd like to sort of say on the podcast today that have helped you in your career or your personal development or through your anxiety, even if you like, that you'd like to sort of say thank you, shout out to them on the podcast? So I think it's always nice to thank people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, apart from myself.
Well, yeah. There's this guitarist in a couple of bands that's and he sings as well. He does all right. There's my wife. I think without question, my wife has got, because the utter unbending support for health issues, mental health issues and struggles, job issues and struggles. Yeah, she's just been incredible. There's no way that I'd have got to where I am. 44 when I suddenly was like, right, I think I'm going to train to be a psychotherapist, and it's 4 to 6 years training, and it costs this much, which you don't want to know. And it's a ridiculous amount, and it's like, one full weekend out of every 4, plus essay writing which is at least another weekend out of every 4, plus evenings. Yeah, off you go, no problem at all. Is it really what you want to do? Off you go. And kids have also been amazing. I'm gonna slip that one in as part of the wife.
That's fine. You're the family. The count. Yeah, we're allowed that.
Yeah, and like I talked about earlier on, you know, we openly talk about mental health issues and what's going on, and I want more and more people to be open and honest about their mental health. And so if we're not teaching kids to do that, then
yeah, we've got no chance, have we?
Yeah, we've got no chance. And like I said, they can come along and snap me out of the spiral by giving me a hug now. So person 2 then. So my wife and my kids, they're one package. I've snuck 3 extra people in there. So my therapist, I think, is a weird one, actually, but he introduced me to me.
Right.
By breaking down a lot of those introjected values, and by making me realize that actually, yes, I do care about what other people think about me, but it's their problem.
Well, yes.
If they have a problem.
That's my favorite one. I'm allowed to dislike people, but no one's allowed to dislike me. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah. Which, to be fair, Bev, works for our music. We're allowed to dislike our music. No one else is. But so yeah, my therapist, I didn't like what I saw when I looked at me when I went to see him after a while. I looked inside and I was like, I don't like this. I don't like what I'm doing to me, and I don't like what I'm doing to the people around me. So he helped me sort that out, which was great. And then, right, okay, I'm gonna sneak in one more.
You're allowed.
That's very nice. It's very nice of you to do that.
The rules are very loose on this.
I've just left the meeting. I've got the button poised, ready to go. So I talked earlier on about when I was living in the caravan at start of lockdown for COVID. And I lived in here for 2 weeks. And I lived in here by myself. And I should explain, my house is there, like 10 feet away. My family lived in there for 2 weeks, and I lived in here for 2 weeks. And it was hell.
And why? Just because I know why, but people listening probably won't know why.
Well, because I'm highly vulnerable to COVID. So we decided,
I didn't like the family. Just fancied 2 weeks. I was in the caravan.
Yeah, it's fancied 2 weeks away, basically. Yeah, we go away in the caravan all the time, but why not put it on the drive? You know. Yeah, it was basically because I'm highly vulnerable to COVID, and when COVID first came out, we didn't know anything about it except for the fact that if I got it, it's going to be really, really bad. So. I
mean, I've had it and it was really, really bad, and I'm perfectly chest and lung wise perfectly healthy. So yeah, I can totally agree with that.
That's just it. But what was interesting in those 2 weeks was that I couldn't have any physical contact with them because they were isolating. I was isolating, so we could all go in the house and isolate together. We'd already taken the call to bring the kids out of school. It's like we just made that call. It was like, actually, this isn't worth it until we know more. And then school shut like 4 days later or something.
Yeah.
So it was good. But my extra person is actually a lot of people, because during those 2 weeks there was a lot of people who not came out of the woodwork, because that sounds slightly insulting, but just went out of their way to help me realize, actually, it's astounding how humanity can shine through. And a lot of it was unasked. You know, it's like I wrote, when I was in here, I wrote a blog because it was the only thing that kept me sane and stopped me from drinking a lot of beer, because there was nothing to do. And there's not a lot of room in a caravan. And during that time I had, you know, you went and fetched us food, because we couldn't get a Tesco's delivery at the time because everyone was booked up. Neighbours went and fetched food. People, they just come out, you know, my neighbours would text me, we're at the supermarket, do you need anything? One neighbour turned up on a Sunday. He said, don't eat breakfast. I was like, what? And he turned up with a full cooked breakfast on a Sunday.
Wow.
For me, on one of the Sundays. Just people just randomly turning up, seeing on Facebook that I was in the caravan and reading the blog, realising what was going on. They just turned up with bags of food for Lisa and the kids. Ice cream for the kids. We thought you might. So yeah, I'm just going to plumb that on as the astounding.
The community, the community of David DuBois and friends.
Yeah, just the kindness and consideration of others when at times.
COVID's brought that out in a lot of people, that the whole pandemic has brought that bit of a community spirit out, almost like that. I hate to use the word sort of blitz spirit, the British kind of thing, but helping each other out, helping elderly relatives, elderly neighbours, you know. I'm not classing you in the elderly neighbours category.
Yeah, I got that. Don't worry.
But you know what I mean? You know, helping people out. Only did they help? And it was like, we're in this together. We all got, and there is a little bit of, now it's a bit like kind of wearing thin, I think, with a few people are being had enough of it. But it's still there. You know, if I, you know, even when I was locked in, people were still offering to bring us food. And, you know, even when I was at, you know, in bed feeling rough, people were still dropping food off for me. So yeah, it's been, right. I think that's a really nice thing. So the human race, really.
Humanity.
Is your third one. Humanity. Brilliant. Okay. You mentioned books a lot. I'm a big reader. Is there one book that people who are watching and listening to that you'd sort of say would make their life better? What would it be? What would you suggest?
So
you can have a couple, because I know you're going to try and sneak a few in. I know what you
like. Right. So, well, specifically for hypnotherapy and psychotherapy and stuff like that, but mainly hypnotherapy. Anything by a gentleman called Michael Yapko. Michael Yapko is just. You read a lot of academic books. You'll know this when you're on a course like I'm doing, and when you did your life coaching stuff, you read a lot of academic books, and they can be dry.
Ooh, they can be, man. They can be a little bit dry, can't they?
And what really pains me, is you pay 60 quid for a book, which is a lot of money.
Yeah.
And then it comes and it's like someone's poured dirty dishwater over the pages, and you know there's information in there, you just can't engage with it.
So, yeah, you can't get to the nuggets are in there, but they're hidden amongst an awful lot of sawdust.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. So Michael Yapko just opened the world properly. There's a specific book called Trance Work that's just brilliant, that covers all the basics of hypnotherapy, and so that was awesome. And then a book that you recommended to me, because I haven't got round, because I've got so many other books to read for my course. I haven't got round to reading lots of books that have been recommended on your podcast. But Sarah Knight's The Secret Magic of Not Giving a Fudge.
Yeah, absolutely.
I bought a prop with me.
Good. You have to bring the prop.
Yeah.
Oh, what's that?
It's my Kindle.
It's your Kindle, right? Sorry. It's just a black square, like an obelisk.
I haven't actually. I thought I'll bring the book in. Oh, hang on. No, I can't. I could have bought Trance Work in, but I don't know where it is. It's upstairs, because we're having work done downstairs, so all of downstairs is upstairs. But yeah, the secret magic of not giving a fudge, which is a different word, but it's a family friendly show, and I know that my mate Phil occasionally listens to it in the car with his kids. So hello, Phil. Hello, kids.
Yeah, it's a book I recommend pretty much every week, I think, to everyone who's on it. Like, if you had not read this, get into it.
Yeah. What was really interesting was when I read it through, I didn't necessarily follow the process that she says. You've got to write all these things down and write all that sort of stuff down.
No, me neither, actually.
Yeah, I did little bits of it, but the ethos behind it and what it teaches you, it's just another step in the line of, you can't control what other people think of you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually, if you care about that, you're giving one of your fudges away, because you have
absolutely. I love the idea of a bucket of fudges that you've got for the day. You've only got so many to give, so prioritize what's important, what matters to you. It's just a lovely concept, and it kind of almost making this kind of, here you are, you can give them away to people, or you can keep them for yourself. Yeah. You can give one. It's like, I don't know, the whole concept was lovely, and it was like, hang on a minute, yeah. And also whether, people wouldn't really notice. Like there was like a sort of a chapter on, if you weren't giving a monkeys about something, I've even changed it now, they wouldn't even notice anyway. You were more worried about what other monkeys they were going to give about the monkeys you were giving than it's this whole lovely kind of chain of events that sometimes it doesn't even matter. And you were getting yourself stressed about it. And it's a great book if you suffer from anxiety, if you suffer from people pleasing, if you suffer from anything like that. It's fantastic. Sarah Knight's I think it's got the secret magic of not giving a fudge.
Yeah, the secret magic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's named after the Maria Kondo book, isn't it? It's got the same name, but yeah, it's brilliant. If you don't mind a few naughty words. Talking of naughty words.
Well, a few naughty words. Just a lot.
A lot of naughty. Well, yeah, on every page, actually, yeah. So there's something our listeners and watchers can read. How about something they could do every day that would help them? Do you something you have a daily? Do you have a daily doing?
a daily doing, matron. Yeah. So this came. Yeah, I used to commute to work. I do about 7.5 miles of walking a day. So I'd walk to the train station, then from the train station to work, and the same journey back. And when I went into lockdown, my step count, especially when I was in the caravan, my step count went from
laps of the caravan. Don't take that many steps, you see.
It was over 15,000 steps a day, and it went down to about 1.2 thousand. It was ludicrous. Well, in the caravan, you've got, what have I got, 4 steps to the lavatory, you know?
Yeah.
And so that disappeared. It came just before Christmas. I had a rough time at work, and I remember laying awake one morning and thinking, I'm getting to the point now where I'm gonna have to go back on antidepressants, which I've only been on once, and I really don't like them because, yes, they take the lows off, but they take the highs off, and I like those highs. So
yes, that's why we're alive. Yeah. To enjoy the highs.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm lying in bed, and I'm like, I've got to do something to not go on these. So what I said was, right, I'm going to get up and I'm going to commute to work, which is basically my lounge.
Right.
And so every morning, every weekday, and occasionally on weekends, I get up, I got myself up an hour early, I get dressed, and I do a minimum of 3-mile walk. And it absolutely 100% saved me from going back on antidepressants. And it was incredible.
Very much one of the favorite things. Yeah, one of the best things you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I've done, because we're quite lucky around here, we've got some quiet roads, but one of the things that I did was then I was like, oh, there's a wood there and there's a cut through there. So I now have adapted my walk to remove as much road as possible, as I possibly can. So even it's shortened the walking bits, but then we've got like a little nature reserve. So I do 2 laps around that instead. And I go and walk through woodland, and I love, and it doesn't matter, rain, shine, snow, hail, don't care. It's like I bought myself a good coat and I'm off out, basically. And I've got my shoes on, and that walking every single morning is so important to me. And when I was poorly last week, and I didn't go for 2 days, and man, did I feel it.
Yeah, you miss it. It's like I've got a dog, so it's kind of part of my daily routine anyway. But you're right, I make sure that I go out and music or a podcast in my ears or my dog. It's just the best start to a day, and it like if I don't do it, I really notice it. I do. You're right. So that's a good tip. Get walking.
Yeah, the podcast's a great thing because I'm able to go out and listen to, like, your podcast. I'll go and listen to on a morning sometimes. And
he's so on brand.
Listen to his podcast. But equally stuff for the course that I go and listen to. There's a great podcast that I listen to. I think I'm 110 episodes out of 180 on it. I just go and listen to those, and I'll come home with, I'll forever be stopping and texting myself. So when I get home, I can write notes.
You're out learning. You're feeding your brain. You're feeding your body. You're creating that, serotonin by going out in nature, walking, doing all the things that the antidepressants will be putting into your body. You're getting them from natural sources. That from food as well, and you're laughing.
And what else is amazing? It's gone now, but we've just come out of wild garlic season, and I love wild garlic. And the wood of the river that's near us was just full top to bottom. But what was beautiful was that they all came out slightly different times because it's on an incline. So as you got in the bottom, you walk in the bottom of the wood, and you could smell it, and then the smell would go. And then as the weeks progressed,
smell would be further up the hill.
Yeah, it got further and further up the hill. It was just ace. Yeah,
that's brilliant. Oh dear. So I've got some for the new series. I've got some new questions which I'm throwing at people, and this is the next couple are 2 of my favourites. What's your favourite word, and what's your least favourite word?
Yeah. So defenestration.
Oh, chucking people out of windows?
Yeah. That has first heard on Red Dwarf, I think.
The defenestration of Prague. I learned about it in my history.
There we go.
Priests out of windows,
Yeah.
Defenestration.
Fabulous. Great word. Love that.
It feels real nice in the mouth, defenestration.
Feels a little bit dirty as well.
Yeah. It's fancy a bit of defenestration.
Yeah. And then my least favourite word is holistic.
Oh, yeah.
Because the amount of people that use it, and I've not got a damn clue what they're talking about. But we're just going to make this holistic approach to it. What do you mean? Well, it's holistic.
It's just holistic, isn't it?
What do you mean? Tell me what your definition of holistic is.
Because it certainly ain't the real one.
yeah. And you know what? I even went on, because we were talking about this around the dinner table the other night, holistic. And my daughter said, "What is holistic?" And I was, I know what my definition of it is. But I'm going to go and check on what dictionary.com's definition of it is and read it out. And she was just like, "Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that." It's like, yeah. So,
there you go. So holistic, very good.
There you go. There's 2 words for you too.
I'm gonna have to think of mine. I'm not a big fan of the word moist at all.
No, there's a lot of people. Actually, I don't mind moist. It's
Onomatopoeia, I quite like, is my favourite word. It's like that nice kind of sound. Yep. Anyway, it's not all about me. This is one. If you've ever listened to Radio 1, I used to. I don't very much anymore, but I did catch James's show. Yeah, Radio 1's Greg James. And he has a thing called an unpopular opinion, where you have to ring in and give me your popular opinion on a thing. Is there something, do you have an unpopular opinion about something that other people wouldn't necessarily agree with? For example, mine would be, I think the music of Bryan Adams is an absolute abomination and should be deleted. The film Life of Pi is garbage, and singing in Disney films is terrible. They're my unpopular opinions.
Fair enough. Yeah, so first off, are you Bryan Adams?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah.
I'm from Nottingham, so the whole Robin Hood thing, it's under my skin forever, and I'll never get rid of it.
Fair enough. Well, I really, really, with a passion, dislike musicals. Now,
I'm looking around going, so do I.
There's no one in
Don't tell anyone.
There's no one in the caravan either. I now, interestingly, I don't mind musicals on stage.
Right.
I've gone and seen. My wife took me to see Phantom.
Okay.
Or did I take her to see Phantom? I think I might have took her to see Phantom. And I really didn't mind that. The stagecraft, singing, it made sense. On film, musicals are just wrong. Mary Poppins walks down the street, or whatever it is. I can't even remember the damn musical now. Walks down the street, and the blooming homeless guy on the corner gets up out the gutter and joins in with the people. And
he knows all the dance moves and all the words.
Yeah, everyone knows the dance. Everyone knows the blooming word, the lyrics. Everyone knows the tune, and then everyone goes back to their own thing. It's bobbins. But so the best music. There's one musical, only one musical.
I'm hoping it's the same one as I've got. It's one musical I can stand.
Oh, brother, where art thou?
Oh, mine's Rocky Horror Show.
I've not watched the Rocky Horror Show for a long, long time, and my memory retention is not that great about it.
I think it's just a good excuse for me to go to the theatre in stockings and suspenders and a wig.
No, you've got a point. And Jason Donovan played our graduation show, came straight from the Rocky Horror Show.
Oh, brilliant.
In full drag, and did all his Kylie and Jason numbers in full
drag. Brilliant.
It was mad. Yeah, it's great. Absolutely amazing night.
So the hate of musicals, but Brother, Where Art Thou? I've not seen it. So is that one that could turn my
Brother, Where Art Thou
thing round?
Yeah, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou is a stunning film. I'm also going to throw something in here because I have to throw something in here because it's a button pusher. Reality TV shows are wrong.
Dare you? You just know that they're one of my advisors, and you want to do
so manipulative in the editing stage. I can sit there because I'm an editor. I can sit there and go, I can see what you're doing, and I hate it. But yeah, I don't watch them anymore. And I shout at the telly. I get banned from watching stuff on the telly because I shout at the telly.
You see, because you've got the kind of the insider knowledge, whereas I'm just one of the mindless drones that love the excitement of reality television. It's that's my one little if anyone comes on here with an unpopular opinion about reality television, I'll be placing end call straight away. So I'm glad you don't like musicals just like me. But what was the original one? It was just you just hate musicals. That was it.
Just musicals. Yeah.
Yes, that's all right. That's a good unpopular opinion to have. I'm a big fan of time travel. I always go about time travel on my podcast, and I've got a course about time travel. What's the one piece of advice you'd go back to give to young 20-year-old dudes if you could travel back in time and meet him? Hold on to that hair. Enjoy that hair. That's what I always say to myself.
Yeah, I used to have beautiful hair.
Yeah, I'd love it.
Hairdressers used to say to me, women would kill for your hair. They wouldn't anymore.
Sinead O'Connor might like our hairstyles.
Yeah. Yeah. On your way to that New Year's Eve party, don't stop at Mole to have that burger because the names, it ruined the evening.
Right, okay,
that'd be one thing. That really, yeah. I think stop caring. The proper answer. Stop caring about what other people think about you. Stop trying to people please. Be happy with you. and you will find people gravitate towards you who you are happy with.
Yes.
Because of that. And so stop trying to change yourself to fit in with others. People will come to you who fit you.
You'll find your tribe.
Yeah, I don't know whether I'd have listened back then, because that sounds a little bit, I think that there's a lot of I nearly used the phrase wisdom there.
Steady.
there's a lot of years come with that.
Yeah. Is that a thing? Is that like, if we did travel back, because that's the same sort of thing I'd say to myself, like, thoughts are not, you know, you're only got thoughts, and don't worry about what people think of you. But do you, at the age of 20, would that sink in? Do you have to have the experience for then to realize it? Possibly you do. I don't know. Perhaps you have to go through all those times for it to make sense now.
Yeah, I can't remember which one of your guests said I wouldn't go back and change anything because I wouldn't be the person I am today.
I think a couple of them said that. Yeah, a couple of them.
And I think that's it's a very valid point. But what I'd quite like to be able to do is if I was going to go back, is try and have a conversation with myself about that, to try and alleviate the anxiety that I'm feeling now, and just be happy.
And say, look,
I think just being happy.
I survived. I'm here. I'm having a good time. I got married. I've got children. Everything's all right. Almost like that sort of sneak peek to the future would make you calm down a little bit about all the potential pitfalls in life. I don't know, possibly. Because I was a bit of a worrier when I was at 20.
Yeah, and I'd probably just say, invest in Google and Apple.
Yeah, get shares in Google and Apple. This is called an iPhone. Invent it quickly. Okay. These my last two questions are always my fun too.
That's two. We're there already. Wow.
Yeah, we are. We've had a right gander on it. What is the one question you'd like me to ask that I haven't? I always get to do by disappearing and come back and ask it.
This is a tough one. And it kind of comes back to the last question. It's like there's almost two here. There's why didn't you do this training sooner in your life? Because it's revealed so much about me.
Mm-hmm.
And who should have psychotherapy? So they're kind of linked.
Hang on a minute.
Go for it.
So, David, we've been friends a long time. Why did you not have this training a little bit earlier for you learn so much about yourself and should have psychotherapy? That was a bit like the chap who interviewed me for my birthday. It was the same voice. Sounds very similar. I wonder who he was.
Just, interesting hair, that person.
Very, very synthetic looking area.
It was, almost ABBA wig-esque. Why didn't I do the training sooner? Well, I think the key answer is that I wasn't ready to do that training. I wasn't at the point where I realized how advantageous it was for someone to go through this process. And who should have psychotherapy? Well, actually, let's just, who should have therapy? Or
everybody.
Well, yeah, there's a really interesting debate about the American approach to therapy and the kind of British European approach to therapy. So we're a reactive therapy environment, whereas America is proactive. So you have a therapist in America and you go and talk to that therapist about what's going on in your life before you hit crisis.
Before it becomes an issue, yeah.
In this country and European countries as well, I'm pretty sure, it's kind of, you hit crisis and you go and see a therapist and then you get yourself back out of crisis and then people stop therapy.
It's like having a service contract with a boiler manufacturer in America, whereas over here you wait till your boiler breaks down and then go and get it fixed. Yeah,
absolutely. It's very, very similar to that.
I can't believe I've just linked therapy with boiler manufacturer, but
I was trying to unpick that to find a gag because there is one in there, but I'm not quick enough to know. But what I quite
you're trying to psychoanalyze me and my obsession with boilers. I know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I need the recording of this just so I can unpick everything that's been said by you. I think it's really important that people in crisis go to therapy. First off, it's such a great thing for you to do. But I really want to. One of the things that I want to try and do when I qualify and when I can and do psychotherapy is I want to try and get people to understand that actually coming along with that proactive approach, that American style, and don't get me wrong, Americans do crisis therapy as well, but they are really good at that proactive approach. Coming along and talking to someone which is why I think one of the other things that I'm going to do is, I'll have my psychotherapy, and I'm considering, we talked about this the other day on text, considering doing full life coaching training as well, because I think hypnotherapy and psychotherapy fit really well together. Hypnotherapy and life coaching fit really well together. And there's some people who don't want psychotherapy because there's a lot of stigma attached to therapy in general over here. There really is. Oh, you're going to see a therapist. Oh, right.
Oh, really?
You're not mentally well. It's like, well, no, I'm not. So I'm going to see a therapist.
So it's a large percentage of the population.
Well, this is just it. Whereas life coaching it doesn't have a stigma attached to it.
It has a very much more positive, goal-orientated feel to it. It's like, oh, life. So you're getting your life sorted, eh? It's got that more kind of, you're not in crisis. You're almost like making a move that way rather than being in this kind of big hole kind of feeling.
Yeah, it can be seen as a more proactive approach. But I know that I can integrate some of the psychotherapy training and definitely the therapy training into that. And so it opens up different avenues. But I think that might be a way that I get into a more proactive. And I want people to do this. This is not just me doing this. Other people.
Before it becomes an issue, talk about it before it becomes an issue, or while it's brewing almost as an issue, rather than coming to you and going, being that kind of, like my analogy was absolutely perfect, David.
It was.
It's boiler serviced every year, so it doesn't blow up in your face.
Yeah, totally. And also the other thing is, if someone turns up in a therapy room or a life coaching room and you go, so how's your week been? What do you want to talk about today? And they go, my week's been great. Actually, I've not got a lot to talk about today. What a great place is that to be? Right, okay, well, that's fantastic. You're still here for the session, so let's talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, let's set some goals. Let's go upward,
Exactly. And that's my goal. That's my aim. When I qualify, I mean, I've got the hypnotherapy qualification coming soon, which allows me to start practicing that with psychotherapy background training. And then, starting to do life coaching stuff and moving on to that. That's the goal, is to help people not hit crisis whilst being able to help people who are in crisis get to the point where they stepping stone on to the next stage.
Which is then building your life, your dream life design almost.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. And I sincerely hope that we're quite a cynical nation, I think. And I hope that as a nation, we're moving on enough to be able to embrace that. I mean, your life coaching business is going great guns, and that shows that and the people you've had on, their businesses are going great.
It shows there is a ground. I think there is a realization. I think lockdown was part of it. People started to realize and started to look more inwardly because they weren't sort of distracted by the outward. And you started, and there's all this nonsense about I'm going to learn Esperanto and learn how to bloody unicycle and all this. But there was also, no, I mean, not me in particular. So the kind of people I heard. Right. No, my Esperanto is perfect. But it was that people started looking at what their beliefs were, what they really wanted to do for a job, so coaches like people like Laura and people like who've had on, who start to look at what you want your dream life to be. All of a sudden, they have people who are like clamoring for that, and that's brilliant. And I think lockdown's had a lot of negatives on people's mental health, but it's also had a few positives which don't get talked about enough. Really, people get to look at their lives properly. The world, a number of times when I was super anxious, I'd be like, I wish the world had just stopped for a bit.
Yeah.
So I could get my head straight. And lo and behold, it did. And so people had the chance to go, what do I really want to get from life? What do I really want to do? So life coaching has been quite important to those kind of people who so yeah. I don't know where the Esperanto and unicycle came in, but I'm sure it did. I'm sure I had a point.
I'm sure we had a bet about that. I'm up and down the drive now.
I'm getting old. So this is the last one. The guest chain question. We had the lovely Christy Mims on last week from last episode from good old US of A. And she asked the amazing question, which I think may stay in the podcast. I like it that much. What is the greatest 80s movie and why? Now, I was hoping it wasn't going to be you answering this because I know how much of a film buff you are, and I know how much hard drive space I've got, and this could take a while.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking to someone who did a film and communications degree.
This is the fear. This is the fear I have.
I mean, yeah, we've got another hour here. I mean, my retention is not great for quotes and for names, but that's a great question. And when I was listening to the podcast of it, you started rattling stuff off, and then it was firing stuff in the back, and I was like, yeah, but what about war games? And what about this? And what about that? And I was just like, what is it? And then I went down a deep rabbit hole. I actually turned the podcast off at that point to have an interior monologue as I walked around the remainder of my 3 miles. It was, yeah, it was a great. So, but I think I've come down to a single film that, and I'm working. Another one's just popped in my head.
You argued with yourself halfway through a sentence.
It's made me doubt it now. But
quick, say it before it.
No, I'm looking at this from a film that you can watch now that still gives you the same feelings and hasn't aged that much.
Oh, okay, right, that's a good approach.
So it's not necessarily controversial. Back to the Future.
Again, it got mentioned in passing. It did, and I love Back to the Future. Has to be said. Just
Because
the first one, not the trilogy.
The first one. Because having watched it back, see the Goonies has popped up now.
Yeah, I love
anyway,
it.
having watched it back, I think it's just got everything from the time, bar all the actors. We were talking about Breakfast Club just before we came on air, and that's got all the actors in, and it's like you consider it compared it to Orange Cordial, where it's all been kind of everything
condensed, condensed 80s-ness. Yes.
Yeah. But it's and I can't remember who it was that mentioned Dead Poets Society, which is not an 80s film, but is possibly
Christy.
Christy, best film ever made. Completely agree with her. She needs to get me on her podcast if she's got one, just so I can talk about that with her. That's all. I've got nothing else necessarily to add to that, but yeah, Back to the Future I think is the quintessential 80s film. And what's amazing about 80s films, straying slightly off topic here, I'm filling your hard drive up because this would be funny if it does crash, is how many 80s films have you gone back to watch with your kids recently?
Oh, quite a lot. Yeah, quite a few. Yeah.
How much more swearing is there in 80s films? And you remember, because we used to watch TV edits.
That's right. And think they used to edit and be like, fudge, you fudgester.
Yeah, I remember watching Ghostbusters, and me and my wife went, was there this much swearing in Ghostbusters?
That was the one that surprised me. I was like, hang on, because I was like, George, is it PG as well? I was like, George, you're gonna love this. This is brilliant. And he calls the man somethingless, and it was like, did he say that? And it was like, that's right, this man has no sense of humor. Or something like that on the TV. It was like, oh, wow. Yeah, we
then you go back and you watch all those films, and it's because we always watched TV edits, because we didn't have the Netflix and the Amazon Prime.
Right. That didn't occur to me, but yeah, now you mention it. Like things like Beverly Hills Cop and like Fudge You Funster, things like that were just brilliant.
Yeah. So what's yours? I'm going to throw that back in.
Oh, God. Well, I did actually. Ferris Bueller's Day Off for me, because... Yeah. It's such a film dear to my heart, but it's so very 80s, and it's so very, I don't know, everything about it is so much fun, and it just reminds me of the first time I watched it, and it just takes me back, and it's a big film. Lisa and I love it, so we watch it together quite a lot, and we quote it quite a lot, so it's, yeah. And National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation is very close to number 2, because we watch that every year, and again, it's so very 80s in its delivery and everything about it. But yeah, I could go on. I think, like I say, I'm going to add this in as the Christy Mims Memorial question, and it will be asked in every podcast.
Yeah, I think it's a good one.
It deserves it. It deserves everyone deserves to answer it. So then, what's your question for the next person?
Well, my question for
devilishly fiendish, one would imagine.
No, well, it's a deep one. I like the light questions that were asked, but something that's been playing on my mind, running through my mind a lot recently, is it's kind of like the Star Trek world.
Okay.
So my question is, if you think it's possible, how can we start to bring humanity together to act in unity, to advance us as a species, rather than as acting as individual nations?
Wow, and I've got to remember that, and I'll have to write that down.
Yeah, no problem.
So I'll have to rewind that. So like you say, like the United Federation in Star Trek are all trying to sort of find somewhere for everyone to move to, or advance through the galaxy and learn more about it. So yeah, how are we going to start that process almost?
How do we come together as a world? So we're coming together as a world. So at the time of recording this, we've got G7 summit going on in Cornwall, and they've started looking at climate change really seriously now and putting some really heavy duty stuff in place, which in my view should have been happening 25 years ago. But that's starting us to move forwards. But there are still people on the outskirts. There are always going to be factions. We're never really going to have perfection as a planet. But as a planet, as humanity, we've got to come together at some point to move off planet.
Yeah, because we won't have much resources left and all that sort of stuff.
Exactly. And help us to advance. You know, you talked about human 2.0 earlier on. You know,
yes.
It's kind of almost like we need to do that. Now, I think the one thing that could bring us together as a planet would be discovering sentient alien life form.
I'm going to say, if you look at, I mean, go back to Independence, that's the 90s actually, Independence Day, the one thing that brings them together is being attacked by aliens.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I would rather hope that being attacked by an alien isn't in the narrative.
No.
However, it is a possibility. But I, you know, something that makes us look beyond.
Yes, and realise we're not as important as we think we are, and we're not as special as we think we are. It might actually activate that unity to go and discover more about. I think that's it. I think it's got to be something off-world that will make us act as one, but don't know what it'll be. I think it's an alien invasion. It's the only thing we've got.
That's it. Well, let's see what your next guest comes up with, because it's like I said, it's not a light one. Answers in less than 7,000 words.
There we go. Yeah, bound and on your desk by Monday morning. Well, look, that
I'm not going to be
doing a podcast about anxiety, and the only thing that's going to unify the world is an alien invasion. Mate, it's been an absolute treat. I mean, I know we chat all the time, but it's been nice to record our chat and share it with everyone else for a change.
It's been quite tame, to be fair.
I really, really appreciate you coming on. I know it's a tricky topic to talk about, and the reason I invited you on, and I'm actually really glad you were the first one of the people to come on who's, you know, all right, you're working towards becoming a sub, but you're coming from that kind of, I've had anxiety and I want to share it with you kind of thing. And because I know we've talked about it loads, and I'm really glad you're the first on it, because being a good mate of mine, I'm really pleased to have you on. So thank you very much, mate. I really appreciate it. And any way people can get hold of you or have a chat with you, or what's the best place to get you through, Instagram or somewhere like that? Or
yeah, I mean, I've got
can they stalk you on there? See your beach photos? I don't know.
They can't stalk me on there, no. But I've got the business that I've got coming up when I qualify is called Talking Steps Therapy. So you can get me talkingstepstherapy.com. Instagram is Talking Steps Therapy. Twitter's Talking Steps. There's nothing getting posted on there at the minute, because if I post before I qualify, I kind of risk being struck off before I start again. So,
but some sort of weird skill there.
Exactly, yeah. But it's one of those ones that, you know, maybe give it a follow, because at some point when I qualify, there's going to be stuff going up there, and you've heard what I want to try and achieve.
Yeah.
And I want to try and get out there and help people to become the best people that they can be, basically, you know, and help people get over anxiety and help people who are struggling. But equally, then look at that proactive thing. Help people who aren't struggling and just want to advance. So give them a follow. Yeah,
defo. So I'll put that in the show notes so that people can click on it and think. But honestly, mate, thank you so much. It's been a bit of joy, and to record one of our chats rather than just let them disappear into the ether.
To be honest, they're better off disappearing into the ether most of the time. But yeah,
this has been a high quality one compared to normal. All right, mate,
thanks. Your audience might listen to it and go, yeah.
Cheers, mate. Thanks a lot.
Thanks very much. See you now.